Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Shorty September, a BookTube event that wants you to look at your bookshelves or your library shelves and find the tiny things. Find the tiny little books. The parameters of Shorty September are 200, 250 pages. I'm looking at books that are even shorter than that, much shorter than that. The really wispy little things that maybe we put on the shelf and maybe we don't look at them. Maybe they get crowded out by the big doorstops that always gather attention. I confess that those little wispy things are not usually my own cup of tea. I like big books. But some of my favorite reading experiences have been concentrated in little volumes. And in Shorty September, you are encouraged to find those little volumes and read a whole bunch of them in the course of the month, because they don't take long to do. One of the reasons that I love huge books is because I'm a very fast reader. And I can't help it. I usually, unless I'm physically sequestering a book somewhere else and forcing myself to go through it physically slowly. If I'm just picking up a book and reading it, my natural reading speed means that if the book is 300 pages long, I'm through it before I can have that wonderful feeling of wrapping myself in a book. Before that can happen, I'm through it. I'm in one end and out the other. I don't always like that. I like to be enraptured by a book, surrounded by it. Everybody does. Shorty September is not going to give me the opportunity to do that, but it is going to give me the opportunity to recommend a lot of things, because I'm going to do rereading for Shorty September. I'm not going to read any novellas from Kindle Unlimited or whatever, just books that I've read before. And the one I want to show you today is from the 1980s. I read it in the 1980s and loved it. And then 5 years ago, I found a paperback copy up in Vermont and read it again, loved it even more. This is Verlyn Klinkenberg, and this is his book, Making Hay, which is part of the Vintage Departures series that was signified by this design with this symbol. The Vintage Departures are great. If you ever come across a whole library of these things, there's scarcely a bad reading experience in the whole lot of them. Most of them deal with fairly exotic locales. This one does not. The author goes out east to go to school and then returns home to Iowa and Montana, to the great bread baskets of the country, and to an entirely different world, a slower world, more avuncular world. This book is illustrated all throughout with pictures from that world. A world that has horizons, a world that has daily duties, a world that I will resist the reductive urge to say is a better world. Although I have an intimate familiarity with this world, with the world that Klinkenberg describes. I have an intimate familiarity with it, and it is really tempting to say that it is a better world. There. That's one view, but there's another view in here that I like even better. There we go. It's respectful. It's beautifully written. It's not at all condescending. This is a genuine homecoming, a genuine recalibrating of expectations. There's no fishing around for cultural obnoxiousness at all. It's just wonderfully, wonderfully done. And it digs right into the details of a world that increasingly fewer people know. Not only here in America, but anywhere in the world. Population statistics show that a gigantic percentage of the American population, something like 70%, live in or around cities. And that number's growing all the time. It's going up. So once upon a time, if this book had come out not in 1986, but in 1886, a huge number, a huge percentage of American readers would have known this world intimately. They would have been part of it. They would have been in very small towns, or they would have worked in or around the orbit of big farms or little farms. I know that world very well. Long, long drives, long driveways. People who talk about the weather as you would a potentially dangerous new relative rather than a trinket at a gift shop. Here in New England, we don't. We talk about the weather as just, I talk about the weather every day as a source of minor annoyances or minor pleasures. But when you live off the land and the weather determines everything and storms are coming from miles before they get to you, it's not trivial. It's something that you take seriously, and that changes the tempo of your day. It did once upon a time. Certainly in the 1970s, 1960s, even the early 1980s, it was true. Uh, and that world is captured perfectly in here. That world has, in large parts of that world have changed in just the last 10 or 15 years. Large parts of that world have changed. The weather itself, the world, the climate has started to change so that there's less and less water. Harder and harder to make little farms prosper. And also there's been a massive amount of business deregulation, which has led to more and more farms just being bought by combines, giant combines of farms that might let the owner stay on, but it's not the same thing as you owning a farm and your next door neighbor 10 miles down the road also owning a farm. It's not the same thing when it's all part of one big giant food combine that has minimum standards and quotas and whatnot. And that's to say nothing of much more recent events. The previous president of the United States started a trade war with China that squarely impacted American farmers. It killed their industry. So they had to go on the dole, on the government dole. They were no longer taking their goods to market. They were instead waiting for a government check. Not a lot of that has bounced back. So this world has changed a lot from when Klinkenberg was writing about it, which makes, I think, the beauty of the writing all the better. I just love this book. I love revisiting. It's only 130 pages, but I love revisiting. I don't know that I've read a book about, especially Iowa, that's better than this along the same lines. So it's, again, a strong recommend. All my Shorty Septembers are going to be short videos, but also strong recommends. If you can find a copy of this book, I strongly recommend it. I recommend it as a glimpse of the unknown if you have never been to the American Midwest, the Upper Midwest, or God forbid, the American West. But also, I recommend it even more strongly if you have been there or live there now. You're going to enjoy this if you do. If for once, you're not going to be condescended to, which is not always the case. I mean, Bill Bryson's book on the same area is funny. I admit it's very funny, but at the expense of everybody who lives there by a sarcastic outsider. This is not the same thing as that. This is lovely. So I'll wrap this up for now. That is my recommendation today. I'm going to try and do another one of these tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.